Yeah, I guess, well, what I want to know is how did you guys end up in Powder Springs? I mean, where did your dad and mom, where did they come, how did they end up here?
That's where they were born.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Because Daddy's born up on the Lost Mountain area, and Mama was born in Powder Springs, and later moved to Atlanta, and then back to Powder Springs. But it'd be natural that we'd be born here because they lived with Aunt Lou and Uncle Newt.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's right.
well,
And
now,
they came to live with Aunt Lou and Uncle Newt because their mother and, well, let me see, their father died. And their mother had taken a train trip, was going on a train trip into Atlanta and fell and hit her head. And I don't know what happened, but she was committed to Mellichamp after that. Apparently there was some brain damage. Today's method, you don't know what could have been wrong.
yeah.
But that did happen, and of course that left Mother and Dotson and Frank
Frank and
and
William.
William. And
Frank was the oldest.
yeah,
And then
and then
William.
and then Dotson and then
Dotson
Mama.
and
Mama was
Mama.
the baby. Of course, they'd had them one right after the other. And Aunt Lou said she'd take the boys, but she would not have anything to do with the girls. And her daughter, Louise, that married Mr. Garnet Heritage that lived here in town and was a merchant, Louise said, well, you're not going to let the girl go, so I will take her. So she took Mother and as her responsibility. Of course, Aunt Lou really wanted the boys because she wanted to work them on the farm. Because they owned, Uncle Newt owned land from
Your
the
own
old.
car.
Okay, but what I had, now this is, your mother's family we're talking about were split up.
Right.
And the boys went because your mother's mother died.
No,
Or
she
she
didn't.
had-
She was committed to Milledgeville, and she did not die until after you all were born.
Born.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
But
She lived the most of her life in Milledgeville. We used to go down. We had an old T-model Ford, and about once every 2 or 3 months. But that was all. It was a long way to Milledgeville from here. It was an all-day trip. But she lived there. She was a beautiful woman. She was a stately woman, beautiful white hair, but no, she died there and was brought back and buried here by her husband. I'm taking all the talking, but I think if you're going to do it, the back history needs to be known.
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's what I want to know. So
Yeah.
when she was committed, she was fairly young then.
Oh yes,
Yes.
because her mother was just still almost a baby. I mean, she was several years old, but you would still consider a baby. But the boys were old enough to help around the house, do chores and what have you. Because at that time, and in our lives, they owned. Uncle Newt had, I guess, thousands of acres of property here.
Mm-hmm.
Because he went all the way out to Nosey's Creek and then back. And of course, a lot of it was the original land grants from the Cherokees. And I think there are 3 or 4 of the old seals that was taken, and this was after the Civil War when they allotted so much land to all of the people in the war. And of course some people didn't want it, and Uncle Newt bought
You
it
bought
up.
it up. And he got a lot of the seals that way by buying.
Well, I don't know. He got a lot of the plats that were original plats that were laid out from the Cherokees. I think there are 3 or 4 seals. I'm not too sure.
These were original land grants from
from the Cherokees,
King
during,
George. King George
they were from the Cherokee nations
Yeah.
into,
Was this like after the Trail of Tears, or, I mean, this is,
no.
I mean, it didn't have anything to do with
this,
that?
No, this didn't have anything to do with that. It was after the Civil War.
Okay.
That I think that he acquired it. He was actually, he had a chain of hotels from Atlanta up to Knoxville, Tennessee.
that went along
And that
the
was-
Seaboard Railroad.
And that was his business,
Mhm.
was hotels and property, and he had slaves.
Mhm.
I don't know how many slaves, but the house that used to be below where I live now, here, was a slave house, and then there was one on the hill in front of here that was used for slaves, and then they later used for sharecroppers,
Yeah.
because he had sharecroppers on the farm. And they farmed the land, and he got a certain amount of money after sharecropping. But
So he was pretty wealthy, I mean,
he was a wealthy man.
Well,
yeah, for that.
He was a wealthy man.
Yeah.
He built the home place for Aunt Lou after the Civil War. I don't know where they lived before the Civil War. But now Mama and her brothers were born in the house that stood where the parking lot of the First Baptist Church is now, right next to the church. And Aunt Lou gave the property for the First Baptist Church to be built on.
mhm.
And but that was where they, of course, they lived close together. But all the people, I guess, did in those communities and that type. But she was.
She could be a tyrant at times, because with us as children, she
Yeah.
shared one of her room was the back room in the old home.
Mhm.
And she had one particular rocker that she sat in, and nearly always, except in the real hot summertime, there was a fire
Mm-hmm.
in her, some small fire in the fireplace.
Mhm. Anyway. Okay.
We, after, of course, grandfather died and grandmother was committed to Mellichamp, and the children then were taken, they were put in the home with Aunt Lou and were reared there. That was their home.
Mhm.
And then Aunt Lou accepted Mother. Of course, it wound up that Mother waited on Aunt Lou hand and foot before her death, which I think is most always the case in a family. But
And Daddy played a prominent part in
oh yeah, Daddy.
latter years,
Uh-huh.
because at that time the Depression had come along, and they had lost Aunt Lou had lost a good bit of money.
Well, they had sold a lot of money.
And
I guess
sold a
they
lot
had.
of land.
I mean, a lot of land. They had. I guess they had to sell it to be able to maintain their lifestyle, so
Yeah.
to speak. I don't. Of course, Uncle Newt. I didn't know, but he went before I came into the world by far. But I don't think too long. I don't really have his date of. I could have gotten it, but I don't
See,
have
we
his
were
date.
looking at those things not too long ago of when he died, and we were amazed to know that he had lived as long as he
Yeah,
did.
he lived much longer than I thought he had, but since Mother was living there, and then of course Daddy's home was up toward due west Lost Mountain area,
Mhm.
Midway section, and as they grew up, they moved. I don't know where he was born. Uncle Luther took me to ride one day. I took him to ride one day.
Mhm.
That was every day we went to ride. And he always liked to ride back up in around the mountain, and he was always pointing out to me, now there used to be a house that sat here, and that's where I was born.
Yeah.
Was Daddy born there? No, your daddy wasn't born there. He was born over so-and-so. But I never did know exactly the area that Daddy was born.
And Uncle Luther, that was
That's
your
my
dad's
daddy's brother.
brother.
Mhm.
And so they he knew where your dad was born. I mean, they were somewhere around Lost Mountain
Right,
area.
Yeah, and he had 2 sisters.
Yeah.
And Grandma was very funny in naming her children because she loved to read. And a lot of her characters, the names of the children were brought from books, as I understand. One was Z, who was the oldest. And
Oh, yeah.
there was an old maid, and she took care of Grandma and Grandpa Rice when they were up until their deaths. And then there was little Busha, who was our dear favorite one, because she was the one that would giggle and she had a fantastic husband, Uncle Cliff Scott. She married a Scott.
This was Tatum, another sister of Z?
Yeah, this was
Did I ever?
This was Claire Helen's
Helen's mother.
Oh.
and she was a twin.
Yeah.
The other twin died at birth, and I don't know really whether male or female. But I guess that Helen could say that, but I don't know. But
Grandpa Rice was we always thought of him as being a very stern, hard old man. I never saw him smile very much,
and I have a
laugh.
totally different feeling about him than what Martha has.
You know.
Yeah.
I always saw
Sure.
him as tall and thin.
Well, he was.
And tall and thin, but you respected him. But he was always singing you a song. He'd take you up on his knees, and where's the little dog gone? With his ears cut tail and his ears cut short and his tail cut long. Something like this, something of this type. He had a lot of little songs.
Yeah.
What did
that
he
he'd
do?
take you on his lap and sing to you.
Just a farmer.
His farmer?
Yeah, they lived in this old house up above
It was on Old Villarica.
Old Villarica Road, and then as we were, I guess, 6, 7 years old, they bought a lot down here on the corner, right in Powder Springs, and built a house.
Yeah,
And I remember them building the house.
I do too.
You know, and they built the house, and it, of course, right at that point was in one of the better sections of Powder Springs, and all. But he would have timber cut and kept it stacked in his front yard and sold pieces of timber, and then he used it also to build his barn and things like that. There's one picture of Catherine and us and Helen
I
and
think
Harry.
this is when they were building the
Building
house
the
where
house.
you had the timber cut and stacked to build.
We were sitting there, but I remember one time in particular about Grandpa Rice was that they always had milk cows. We always had cows, milk for that. And evidently this milk cow was ripe and ready to be bred, and she was low in no and letting people know without any uncertainty that she needed a bull. So anyway, Grandpa was rather dignified, didn't let you know what was really going on. So me as a small child, I was sitting there, and here they were dragging this cow off down the streets, and I thought they were going to kill the cow. and Grandpa, he kept saying to Z, take those girls in the house now. Now you tell them nothing's wrong. So here they were leading that old cow down the road, and the old cow going moo, that is one of my memories. But then I can remember him being so stern, and of course, whenever he said, I want something done, Dad and Uncle Luther went, they did it. Pa wants it done.
There was a power there and it was instilled in all, because I can remember Mother, I guess, and Daddy's biggest arguments were over Uncle Luther's children. Because if it did not make any difference how much needed to be done at home. If Uncle Luther wanted Daddy for a Saturday when he was off, Daddy went to Uncle Luther's. And this used to upset Mother tremendously, that and Daddy'd come back and try to kill himself then trying to catch up what he should have been doing at home. But he'd always go and work for Uncle Luther.
Right.
And, but it was just part of their characteristic, and I guess it was the dominant father that, because Grandma was just the sweetest, meekest little thing.
Yeah.
She was head of that, I mean, she was head of the kitchen, and that was about the extent of it.
What she did.
She did
She
the cooking and
talked very little.
um,
You know, except when they would get together with the family, which would be, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, that different members of the family. Of course, Grandmother Rice was a Kemp before she married Grandpa. And she was very short, petite, and I don't recall her as having too much of a sense of humor. You know, she kind of giggled and snickered, and
she
was
was
rather
that little
retired.
reserve where you had as the woman of a period of that time. I think the rain's gonna
I know.
come in and make noises for you. It looks like it is.
But I think that it was that both it was fun. Mother and Daddy ran off and got married because Aunt Lou didn't approve of Daddy and really didn't think that he was good enough for, he wanted his background was not that of what she would like to have had marry into. And then I kind of felt like that Grandpa and Grandpa Rice felt like that she was just too uppity for Daddy. So therefore they ran off with a friend, and I can't remember who.
Beatrice Bookout. And Wayman.
Jenny Bookout.
Wayman Bookout, and it was Beatrice. No, it was Beatrice Bookout, and Wayman Bookout was her brother. So maybe it was the two of them that went with them. I don't know. But anyway, I know Beatrice went because she was one of Mother's best friends, and the Bookouts later bought the house where Mama and her family lived. But when they were born, after Mama and them went, and they sold the house where Mama and them were born, and the Bookouts bought it. But so they had a family and they grew up together, so Mother and me became regular friends. But
they were married at the First Methodist Church
in
Marietta.
And the big deal, they came, I don't know how they got there. I think guess they had an old T model like we had when maybe Daddy had that when they married, I don't know. I don't remember when Daddy got the T model.
I know. Mother used to talk about Daddy. Daddy had a buggy that he bought and owned when he courted Mother. And evidently this very high-spirited horse. And he used to go down and pick Mother up.
A buggy.
Horse and buggy.
Yeah.
And he used to pick Mama up. And Mama used to laugh about him because she said that he would speed through town. He would go too fast. And I would think we were going to turn over.
But he and Henry Kemp, a cousin of his, had a lot of fun together in that buggy. I think they did a little hot rodding in them, from what all accounts. And they looked like but they always, when you ever saw a picture of them in the buggies, they always had on their flat hats, straw hats with a flat round brim. And their suits and ties, they were dressed up when they went riding those buggies. That's I guess the only time they got them out was on Sunday. Right. They didn't, because the other time they were in the wagon.
And you talk about two dudes.
They were dudes.
Now they were just, and Daddy was just
And they were good looking men.
Good looking.
In
really.
that period of time, but,
Yeah.
we actually, going back to Martha and I being little, Daddy had a grocery store in town. A general mercantile, let's put it that way. It's where
Right.
Porter's Garage is now.
Yeah.
And it was,
Two
levels.
levels.
Uh-huh. And the upper part, he had grocery store and grocery items, and that was back when the crackers came in barrels and boxes.
Pickles.
Onita Crackers put a great big box with layers of crackers. Of course, by the time you got to the bottom, they were stale, you know. They were still good. It was something to eat.
Then they
And
had,
then the sugar was in the book to have a big barrel of sugar, then they had to weigh it up into bags.
flour too.
Tie it off. Everything was nothing was prepackaged then.
No,
Yeah.
no telling
Cheese
how
was
many
on a big
rat
hoop, and it
droppings
had
were.
the big knife that you cut it down with, and then on the lower level was dry goods and feed,
And farm machinery.
Yes.
Some farm
Mhm.
machinery.
plows,
And all of
which
that.
was about the extent of farm machinery at that time.
And this, gosh, this area back then, this is 19, what we're talking somewhere,
And this was in the 20s.
the
late
20s.
The 20s,
And this
Because
was,
I was born in 20 and I was a child at that time. And I know when, that I have vivid memories of this while Dad had the old store that on Saturday nights, the Masons, which was a big order here. And that was a big activity for men at that time because there wasn't any social life or anything to get together with. But so most of them joined the Masons. In fact, I think Luther was a worthy patron or
worshipful master.
worshipful master or
Yeah.
whatever in his lifetime. And Daddy went through the steps, but he never did take an office.
I never, as a child, I can remember so much. Once in a while, we would be allowed to go up to where they
To
had
the
their
door, but
meetings,
you-
door,
yeah.
but you never could go in.
Mhm.
And I always asked where that goat was. You know, I never
Uncle
knew.
Dotson used to
once.
say that, what do they do up there? Well, they ride the goat. They ride the goat. But back to this thing, I can remember going to having oyster stews and oyster suppers, and they would be oyster stew, and everybody had cows, and they'd bring milk, and of course they'd order a case of oysters, or sometimes they'd go into Atlanta and pick up fresh ones. It depended, but they'd move everything out of the basement of that lower level of that store, and people would bring their tables and chairs
And
in
the
their
silverware.
wagons to the store and put it off, and the silverware had strings around it of different colors where you could tell it apart, and they'd set up those tables and they served oyster stew. And of course that was a big treat for us
Oh, yeah.
because they had those little oyster crackers, and we
And we
had
didn't
those
really
at-
like the oysters, but we ate the stew because of the crackers.
We ate a lot because of the crackers. I mean, those were the best little crackers in the
Crackers.
world. But then I thought all of the trouble they went to have that, I mean, but it was such an impression with me.
Did they charge, I mean, for the,
I don't really remember if they did, it probably didn't amount to a whole lot. I think it was just a kind of get together, and everybody
Yeah.
brought, the others brought cakes. I mean, they had pies and cakes
yeah.
for dessert and oyster stew. That was just a big, I think once a winter, that was what they did. It was, long as Daddy had the building, and then, he and Luther were in it together, and they had a bank,
Went bankrupt.
I know they closed, they
They
sold it.
closed this.
But they had a lot of people one man in town, bankrupt against them for $10. That was Depression time,
Gosh.
and, I had a little book, J.B. Rice had, and I've got it somewhere. I offered it to the museum, and she said, well, she felt like it should stay in the family. But it had, items that were charged in the
Yeah,
amounts.
Uncle Luther had
And
a book and kept it.
This came out of
Of
JB,
money.
it came
Is
through
it?
JB, it didn't come from Uncle Luther.
Mhm.
Uncle Luther kept the books in the store. Daddy didn't do that.
Mm-mm.
Martha always got to go more to the store than I did. I
She
don't
always
know,
says that she
Daddy,
resented it because she thought I was the
he
favorite.
always would take her, but he wouldn't take me.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It just really upset me. I can remember standing on that red bank watching him walk down the street and crying.
Yeah, I know what you, as a middle child, I know a little
Yeah,
bit.
just standing there crying like everything.
Left out. They,
I can remember going to town as a kid,
Mhm.
and Mama would send us to town to get a loaf of bread, and of course this was when, what, we were about seven, eight,
Well, we were a little older than that.
older than
We were
that, maybe 8
about
years.
10 or 12, I think, yes.
Yes, and we'd go down there and get this loaf of bread, and then bread was never sliced,
Mm-mm.
and we'd eat the middle out of the bread. When you come back, all Mother had was the outside of the crust.
Crust.
how did y'all know to do that, I wonder? I mean, what
She
did you
never did
think?
fuss. Mother was one of the most patient women, I guess, in the world. And as I see friends today, I ran into a lady a Martha McKinney we grew up together. She was a little older than, a good bit older than myself, but older. I think she's about Helen's age. And she said the best time I ever had in my life was at your house. And so many different ones say the best time I ever had in my life. You had the sweetest mother and daddy that anybody could ever wish for. And that Mama had no objections to you going to the kitchen or to going in and cooking for you or letting you cook. She didn't mind the mess. I mean, she just cleaned it up and let you go on as long as it kept you happy. I guess it was things maybe that she might have not
Wanted
had the
to have done
privilege
as
to
a
do,
child.
but she wanted her children to be able to do it. But
She wasn't so
Most
strict.
of the time, our
Uh-uh.
friends were insisted our parents join them.
her mama
You know,
did
it was a
all
standard
that.
thing.
Mhm.
And I can remember times that we've had, as teenagers,
Mhm.
we've had friends and we would all, just spontaneously all of a sudden,
Mhm.
we'd be drinking something, somebody would throw water on somebody. Well, you next thing you know, there was the biggest water battle in the world going on. Well, I can envision any woman today saying, standing in a well and drawing, or a spigot and drawing water and handing a bucket of water to say, here's a bucket of water. Well, it was nothing. We would go flying through the hall of the house, and here would be, it'd be ankle deep in water. You
Yeah,
know,
if they got under the
and-
bed, we
and
could
got
go
under
roll
the
the
bed.
bucket under the bed.
You know, under the bottom of the bed, you know, you get a face full of water, and afterwards we cleaned it up.
That's right. You made the mess, you
Cleaned it up.
That's how she got the floors clean.
Then every Saturday, it was Daddy's job, maybe once a month, I guess it was, he cleaned the kitchen floor.
Mhm.
And he always cleaned it with lime. And he would,
And not every, that was about once a year with life.
well, maybe with lime.
Mhm.
But that kitchen floor would come up as white as anything you ever saw in your life. It was beautiful. And he cleaned it with a shuck wash. He scrubbed it with a
Was
shuck.
it wood or is it a wood?
Wood, yeah, it was wood,
Mhm.
wood floor in the kitchen. But she would say it's time, Tatum, it's time to clean the floor, and they would clean the floor. As far as our Christmases, I don't think, up until we were probably teenagers, did we have a tree. I don't remember.
Yeah, Daddy got us one. I can remember under the 10 age having a tree. Never did have much on it because we didn't have anything to put on it. We would take
Colored paper and make,
little circles out of them and glue them
Then
together
we
and
did
make a
popcorn.
chain. But well, we ate the popcorn. we didn't have time to
String it.
string it. We might have got a few, but it was always a pine tree, and Daddy always stuck it over in the corner in the old dining room.
Once in a
And,
while, we'd have candles, but particularly like one night, Mama was so afraid of fire that one night the candles would be lit, and as soon as they were lit and everyone said, oh, you know, then the candles were blown out. But we had these little things, you know, with the candles, real candles, and you'd go around, light the candles on the tree.
So
Everybody stand back and say, "Ooh, how pretty!" But most of the time on Christmas, we had 2 chairs, and one for her, and one for me, and they were always all of our presents were put in the chairs, and they weren't too
No,
much.
they weren't, Martha.
Yes, they weren't
No,
too
they
much.
weren't. I can remember it being stuck up in the tree.
But they were one.
Well, we got
um,
something, one was special, well, they might have put it in the chair, but I really remember it on the tree more than anywhere.
do you remember any particular Christmas? I mean, one that stands out, or any?
I think the biggest Christmas I remember was Mother and Daddy, was after we became adults, and the first year we were both married, and we had Christmas at home. And another couple were there, and it was the year before Mother died, and everybody had gone overboard in purchasing, not buying much. Daddy had gotten Harley and Yardy both leather jackets, and Mother had made Martha and I both quilted bathrobes. They were pieced and then quilted by hand.
Beautiful.
And cut. Well, she cut the pattern, and then she did string quilting over that, and then put them together and bound the edges. They were gorgeous.
Well, you got.
And they gave us both a set of dishes, and
We gave
I
Daddy
guess
a
it was
ham.
and we gave him a bushel of peanuts. I think did Mother buy the ham?
Maybe she did.
I don't remember, but we had all this hid up on the front porch upstairs, where Daddy wouldn't know what he was getting. But we had a big celebration that time, and I think it's one of the most memorable. I remember back when we were kids, we always, Mom always made eggnog every year, and they'd get up early in the morning, and everybody in the neighborhood made eggnog, and they'd go visit the houses, and then
And Daddy
they'd
would
come to
come.
the house,
Yeah.
and
Daddy
then
would
they'd
come back tips, and Mama would say to Daddy, "Tate, you've had too much."
But then they'd fix breakfast, and but one time I remember Daddy he was changing his clothes because he always worked after he got back home, and he couldn't get his feet in his pants, and we just died laughing. It was so funny to watch him. Of course, but this was a new experience for us as kids, and the only time we'd ever seen him that way. He was standing by the fireplace in the dining room, just dying. I can get my pants in my legs, my legs in my pants.
Mother
I'm
was,
working like
Mother was very prissy, you know. Tate,
You've had too much.
you've had too much to drink.
She tolerated it. She never did fuss at him.
No,
Well,
But she took very little herself.
yeah.
it was only on a very rare
Very
occasion.
special occasions.
that she did.
right, uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I can remember, I go back to the early childhood, I guess maybe I'm getting senile. I'm going back into the past, but I can remember having, Mother cooked down in the middle of the day. We had a wood stove, and we had an old engine. Well, Daddy rigged a tank out by the back porch, and he had an old engine that he put on it, and a belt, and put a pump down in the well. It was gasoline, and of course he'd crank that up in the afternoon, and had 55-gallon drum up on this wooden tank, and he would fill that. He'd pump it until it ran over, and if Mother he always did it on a wash day, and he'd also fill up we'd fill up the tubs and the wash pot, where she wouldn't have to draw a whole lot of water. This was just, he always did this
Yeah.
for her, so all of her wash water was drawn when the day came by this old gasoline tank, but he did it, engine, but anyway, everybody in the neighborhood
Knew
knew.
Tate was pumping
That
water.
Tatum's pumping water,
Water.
you know, boom, 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 bap, boom, 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 bap. And up on this hill, everybody could hear it, and no telling how many miles around. And I see friends today that say, "Oh, I always remember your daddy pumping water."
And then for years, we had neighbors that lived next door to us, the Mellors, and her name was Dave, Miss Kitty, and his name was Dave, and we call him Uncle Dave and Miss Kitty. And the woodshed that Daddy had, you know, was right between their house and our house, you know. And Daddy always wore BVDs, you know, as one piece suit with a drop, you know, in the back part. So anyway, Daddy would always get his wood split, but every morning it was his thing to fill up the wood box before he went to work. And weather meant nothing to him. Cold weather, warm weather, you know. He still went to that woodshed every morning in his BVDs and loaded his arms up full of wood and came back and put it in the wood box. And Daddy thought he was getting by with something for years until in later years Miss Kitty said, Tate, what was wrong with you this morning? You didn't go and get wood. He had filled up the wood box the night before, you know, and he said, Lord, I didn't know Miss Kitty was watching me. And Mother says, why do you think she's been standing in that window all these years?
Here comes Tatum.
And then one time I remember when she called him over and called him, Tate, come here. You know, what's wrong, Miss Kitty? Get your gun. Come over here, there's polecat. And she had a chicken house, and polecat had gotten in the chicken house. Miss Kitty, you get out of that chicken house. Well, come here, it's right in here. You know, Miss Kitty, I said for you to get out of that chicken house, you're gonna get sprayed. And about that time, Miss Kitty got out, and man, I tell you, that polecat let loose. And
The whole neighborhood.
the whole neighborhood was permeated.
That was a frequent thing growing up, was the polecats and the chicken houses. Everybody had a chicken house and everybody had a hog pen. And everybody had a cow in a pasture. I mean, that was just part of living. So we bought the necessary. But I remember lots of times the neighbors would come and visit at night and we would sit in the bedroom and talk and popcorn. And in the wintertime, if we had fruit, we'd eat it. Mostly, we had these old wire baskets for popcorn poppers and they were popped over the fire. And of course, if we
It
put
was
a little
burned.
you mostly always burned, yeah. You're burning the popcorn, but I can also remember in cold weather, Mother cooking on the fireplace in the front bedroom where we stayed, and that was where we sat at night. In fact, that's where we slept at night in real cold weather when we were growing up. There were 2 double beds in the front bedroom at the old house, and Martha and I slept in one. Mom and Daddy slept in the other one. As we got older, well, they moved into the back bedroom after Aunt Lou died. And, of course, we were both born in the house upstairs because that was where Mother and Daddy lived. But we did graduate to the downstairs after a time. I don't know.
So you were both born up in that house?
That's right,
Yeah.
And a doctor came
and delivered.
and delivered?
I was born at 1 o'clock. They were recording births at 20. In 20, they weren't in 18. And Uncle Luther recorded me because he was clerk of the city at that time.
Oh.
And so he was the one that
He's recorded your...
recorded.
But Mom,
the
they weren't
birth.
recording?
They weren't recording at the time that she
No,
was.
What did they do? I mean, just put something in the Bible or the...
No, I think I had later on to get my birth certificate to prove I was born.
Yeah, you had to get so many people.
You know, I had to
that
get
you
so
had been
many
born.
people to
Is that
say that
right?
I was, that I
Affidavit.
came. I have this thing in my pocket. I kind of want to read this. about when I was born, you know. But a couple of years ago, someone real dear to me gave me this. And it said, God danced the day you were born. You were breathed into life, loved into existence, into time by the love of the Creator, who even now breathes you at every moment. You are God's. And
Where'd you get that?
the first time that I picked this up and read it, you know, Debbie was with me, and that's Deborah Warlick. And so anyway, as reading this, I said, you were breached into life. You know, and I said to her, how did you know that I was born breached? And she says, Mother, that's not breached, that's breathed. So, but I was born breached, and a very difficult birth, as I understand it, you know. And Dr. Middlebrooks had to deliver me with forceps. So I guess I paved the way for you when you came along. You didn't have to do that. But
Did he deliver you, Catherine?
Yeah, he delivered me too.
His name was Dr.
Dr. Middlebrooks. He had his office there up the street. He was about a block and a half from us, I guess. And the house that he had was built for an office on the end of it, and he mixed his own medicines. And he not only delivered us, but he also doctored us for everything that was wrong with us from the itch and the lice on down, because we had all of it.
we had, yes, we did.
Going to school.
Measles, I didn't have mumps till after.
We didn't have another doctor around for a long time until Dr. Clark came in, preceding World War II. We had Dr. Garrett at Austell, but we had a Dr. Lindley that was a local here in Powder Springs. In fact, his wife was Uncle Luther, married Nonny Barnes, and Dr. Lindley's wife was Faye Barnes, so they were sisters but not alike. But it tied in there. But I can remember back when we had these two little iron beds in the front bedroom, and Martha and I always playing, of course, creative games. We didn't we had Pachisi and we had Flinch, and a few other.
Old maids, we played old maids.
But Flinch we played a lot.
Yeah.
I wish I knew how to play it, I've forgotten that. But Mom and Dad always played with us. I mean, that was a family thing at night. We'd sit down and play some games. And Daddy had an old Aladdin lamp that hung from the ceiling and had these wicks on it, and he'd pump it up. Oh, we had the brightest light in town, of course, electricity.
Yeah, man.
And but Martha and I were playing on the beds, and I had a old rug of a thing over my head, and I was going to be a dragon, and she was supposed to get away from me, and I was going after her, and I got too close to the foot of the bed, or the head of the bed, or wherever. Anyway, she got away from me. I fell off, and that iron right down my nose, right here, just peeled the skin. I thought I was killed.
It was my fault.
Yeah, it was your fault. If I hadn't have been the dragon, I wouldn't have happened.
I remember once on the back of this house, it isn't there, I don't think anymore, but there was a room, extra room on the back that was used as a laundry room.
That was the smokehouse and the washroom.
Was it? Well, anyway, it was where Mother put her clothes after they had been laundered but not ironed. And the lady,
Oh, that was
the back room, the one Aunt Lou's room, it was the little room off of the kitchen. Later on was torn off.
Yeah.
But this was in that corner, this room, and I remember one of the iron bedsteads as being in that room, but it never was made up. It was always piled up with clean clothes most of the time on it, you know. And this one time, Catherine and I were there playing, and the thing was full of these sweet smelling clothes. I always remember the smell of those clothes because they were so sweet. And so we were playing, and we were at Barbara playing house or something, and I covered her up with these clothes. And she went to sleep. And I mean, she was piled up under these clothes. I had her really, all of the clothes on top of her.
She tried to suffocate me.
Yeah, I sure did. I never liked her really. but anyway, I went on playing, and I forgot where she was. And later on, Mother came looking for her. And she said, Martha, have you seen Catherine? No. Do you know where she is? No, I don't. So, anyway, this really shook Mother up. So, of course, our Uncle Dodson, who was the bachelor, lived with us. So she called to him, Dodson, have you seen Catherine? No, I haven't. Well, we'd better look for her. So they went looking all of the familiar places they could think of, you know, and couldn't find her. So then she said, well, somebody had better tell Taylor, go tell Taylor. And he was still down in the store, working in the store at that time. So they went and got him, and they said, we can't find Catherine anywhere. So then they formed a searching group, and it was Daddy and a lot of the merchants in town, and they all went out, and they were looking all in the barns and everywhere you can think of, you know, and down the branch, you know, which ran back of the house, and all of this, and all of these people out looking for her. And anyway, finally, Catherine woke up, came waddling out, you know, half awake, you know. Where have you been? I've been asleep. Martha covered me up with her clothes and I went to sleep. Why didn't you remember where she was?
Probably caused a panic in the whole.
Then it was absolute
Short-term memory.
short-term memory. I never have regained it.
You're talking about the branch. You remember the old, when Daddy went down and dammed it up, we took the wooden boards and he packed dirt in there and made us a swimming pool.
Oh, Lord, yes.
We used to go down there and swim in that thing, snakes,
Yeah.
all of it.
But Mama would get there,
Oh, I know.
lay in there
We
and
all
swim
would
with
get
her.
in
All would swim,
Mhm.
you know.
It's a big old, one of the big hole. I guess it, today it wouldn't be as big as a bathtub, but it sure did look big then.
And then he, one of his favorite things was on Saturday, he always cut wood in a certain time of the year for the firewood that Mother would cook with. And one of the,
burn too.
and burn, yeah. Well, a lot of the things were burned cold and sometimes in the fireplace.
Yeah,
Living
but most
wood.
of our equipment for the dining room and
Was oak wood.
and the kitchen too was wood.
But he always, Mother would pick a little, fix a little picnic lunch, you know, and it wasn't very much, whatever she fixed, just kind of like a snack or something. And of course, unheard of back then to carry anything but water, carried a jug of water. And Daddy we would carry certain tools, like the chisels and certain things like that. And Mother would carry the picnic basket, but that Daddy always carried Mother a chair to sit in. You know, he always took a chair so she could sit in this chair and didn't have to sit on the ground. And of course, we'd spend a day down there in the pasture.
Spend the day in the pasture. There's nothing wrong.
That was a picnic, or That was
Well, it
just,
was Daddy's work day.
Oh, he
But
cut
he had
wood
his-
while
Yeah,
y'all,
he cut wood.
But he had his family with him,
Mhm.
you know, and there weren't many times that, we were excluded.
No.
You
that's
know,
something. That's really, he
that-
was quite a father.
Oh, he was quite a father.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's why I hear so much today about what wonderful parents you had. I mean, everybody. I mean, not just one person, but all of the people that we ran around. I know the best time I ever had was with the dance. I've said that before, but they really meant it, and I know that you had the best mom and dad with anybody I've ever seen, which I think is wonderful when you come up with a rapport that of memories that there was so much happiness there. And I guess this mother's life, I don't guess her life, early life was possibly not the happiest. I don't know. She died so young. I was 21 when Mother died. So you really don't learn a whole lot about as much as you'd like to know about your parents. And in that time, because it's only at that age that you realize you ask questions. Really, I mean, you're kind of following the instructions up to that time, and you don't ever start to ask questions. And there are a lot of things I'd like to know about her. I know that it couldn't have all been happy, not having her mother and her own parents with her, and then Cousin Lloyd died shortly after Mother after she accepted Mother, so it left her without Lloyd. And so I guess she made up for it with her happiness with Daddy, because I think that they truly had a lot. And another thing that they used to do for us, which I said, well, many parents wouldn't do, we didn't have much money after the Depression, you know. Daddy had to sell the business, and he took a job in Atlanta for William Malone, and he was a dry goods salesman, and we had an old T-model Ford. And of course it was a touring car, and he'd drive that thing to Austell and catch the train into Atlanta. And then that night they'd catch the train back to Austell and get in the old car and come home. But preceding that, Daddy was on the road, and he had to travel up to Cedar Town and Rockmart selling merchandise. Well, that was almost a 2-day trip, because there weren't the filling stations, and he'd take that old T-model Ford and be gone with it. But what I was getting to, he had to work on Saturdays after that, a lot of times, in fact, most of the time. So Mama and I and Martha and I would all go down to catch the train. Daddy'd go in early time, and we'd catch the later train, and we'd go into the terminal station. And we'd get off the train, and we'd walk over to, it was just a few blocks over to where Daddy worked on Friar Street. And or sometimes we would go over on Whitehall to around Hayes, which was down around Hunter, I believe, the general area. And there was several eating places. I know one particular one was a Rose Tea Room. Only place we ever ate out, except family.
And that was and that was special that we ate.
Oh yes, it was very special. It was the same thing we ate at
Rose tea.
Rose Tea Room.
Yeah.
But we'd go.
But they had white tablecloths and
napkins.
napkins.
Because we was raised up with linen napkins
sure.
and tablecloths.
And Sunday was our day for grace, for learning the graces.
Performance.
Yeah.
Graces of how to eat and behave yourself at the table.
Right, and Sunday was that day.
Right. But we'd go in, and Daddy'd meet us, and there were 2 or 3 shows. There was the Alamo, and theaters, movie houses, whatever.
One went from Broad to Spring Street. Straight through.
There were 2 right down on Whitehall.
One Alamo number 1, Alamo number 2.
Right, but
One
we
was
would go
down
to a
Broad
movie.
House.
What do you remember? What first movie you think?
Oh, they were silent movies, honey.
Movies.
Most of them were westerns.
Yeah, and had the piano,
Playing,
piano
Real
playing,
piano
and
player?
it, you know, when it got real.
Get
And
real
then,
loud and cool.
then when it was sad, they played this sad music.
Like,
Just mournful sounds, but even, but that was almost every Saturday. We'd shop, we'd get in and we'd shop a while, and then we'd meet Daddy somewhere down on Whitehall. Sometimes we would go uptown, and that was to where Davison's was, and that was the Georgian Theater, and what was the other one?
Well, it was the Rialto, Roxy.
The Roxy.
Yeah.
Well, the Rialto was kind of off from,
On Spring.
It was on Spring, rather than, this was, I'm talking about going to Whitehall, which was a continuing street up to Beach Street. Lowe's Grand one there at that time because it was built.
Where the Hurt building
Yeah.
was, down in that way, that area.
do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Of course,
He thought we all know what it was
know what it
like.
was like, so.
So he asked Daddy and Mama if he could take us one night, and they said yes, so off we went. And we just had a big time.
Big
But,
time.
you know, when we were going to the show back then, I mean, we went for 25, 30 cents, sometimes, most of them 15. And that included, the stage shows, and when they had the Rockettes, it was nothing to have the Rockettes in town. Which we accepted. I mean, they were just a bunch of dancers, you know, they, the Rockettes.
From New York?
Yeah, New York,
yeah.
they had played stage shows from all the
And
rocks
all of
later
the
on.
bands, I mean,
Fox.
Guy Barlow and Paul Whiteman and all of those people. The Gershwins were here on stage, I mean, and, Kay King, what guy, Kay King,
Kay Kaiser.
Kay Kaiser. Okay, he was a big one, and, but we saw more shows than you would ever dream of. We had that privilege, thank God, I mean.
As a teenager, I can recall vividly the fact that it didn't matter so much what a boy looked like, but he had to be a good dancer. You know, and that was my number one priority. You know, he could look like heck, but if he could dance, man,
He could go.
he could go. You know. And I had one special friend back then that he and I would dance together an awful lot, and we were good dancers. And he used to come up and say, Martha, you got a date tonight? Well, so-and-so's band's playing over so-and-so, you wanna go? Yep, so we would go. Come
Of course,
back.
there weren't any telephones at
No,
that time,
no.
so it's kind of like Arkansas. You can't find a phone out there for the public either, they're all private. No pay phones.
But you know, one of the things that I think was real important in our childhood was that we had, as children, we didn't have a lot of young people or children around us. We had a group of old people that lived all around us. Maybe MJ next door, but gee, he was what, 5, 6
6 years.
When was
older
that?
than we were. But all of the people around us,
Why is that?
Well, their families, they weren't reproducing.
and they were just older.
So they were like that Aunt Lucy and Uncle Newt that built the house there, and the other people around them were that age, so they had produced their families, and Mom and Dad moved in, and they were a younger couple, so they
Oh, coming
started
into an older,
older
older
neighborhood,
neighborhood.
so they started reproduction, and so we were kind of.
We were the kids that spoiled
The Rice Girls.
Rice
The
girls.
Rice Girls. Mama let us wear shorts to town. And of course, some of those older people just thought,
That was
did you see the
terrible.
Rice Girls?
Girls.
They looked terrible.
Terrible. You see
Letting
that?
them
Little
wear,
legs shiny. Well, their little butts, showing.
I remember not directly across from the street from us, the camp, directly across the street from us near the camps. And her name was,
Right.
Bright,
Well, I wonder maybe, but everybody called me.
ever called Miss Bright. And his was Tom. Tom. And he ran the swimming pool there in town, and had up above the swimming pool where you dressed and all of that was a big, back then, I bet it was not.
Oh, it was huge. It was
Huge.
larger than this house,
House.
I ever think about.
But they had a dance floor up there. And
Upstairs.
upstairs, and they would have, well, later on they had a
It was 3
jukebox.
floors, because the top was the dance, and the second floor was ladies dressing, and the basement was men's dressing.
But they had a big swimming pool, and he ran that. And I know they were the first to have a form of gas lights in their house, and he had the system out in the back that he put the chemicals in that provided the gas that lit the lamps in the house, and you lit them and they burned, in their home.
So this was not LP, he had that extra.
No, he had the system that was a system like little pools. And he put these chemicals in these pools, and he would go out periodically and stir it up, and whatever it did, it formed a gas and provided the gas for the system in the house for burning. But then down to the left, in our home, you would go at the bottom of the property, you would start in and make a complete circle and come up to the house, and go around. And down to the left were the Butners, Miss Sadie and Mr. John Butner. Now they were a very well-to-do family, and they had a home in Florida, and then they stayed part of the winter at the Georgia Terrace in Atlanta,
They spent a lot of their winters in Cuba.
and a lot of winters in
That
Cuba.
was when you could go to Cuba.
And they were, as I always have said about our childhood, we were brought up with plenty of atmosphere and nostalgia, little money. But anyway, the Buttons had this huge touring car and these big old lights on the front. You remember that thing stuck out like the two big orders or something. And they had their own chauffeur. And it was the
Well, these
kind,
people had some money.
and
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, this was the kind that you could drop. It was a touring type car, I guess.
The top, it was convertible.
Top, and
type,
you could
but
let the top
would
back.
go on.
And there was a glass partition between the chauffeur, and the back seats, and then
But there were little seats.
seats would drop down. So, I, as a kid, can remember going down to the driveway, and the road was not paved at that time, but I knew I couldn't go across that street. That it was, I'd been one not to cross that street. So, no telling what horse would come by.
Well, we had a fence around the yard too.
Yeah.
A picket fence around the yard.
But I go down there and I call and I'd say, Sadie, come get
And
me.
you miss Sadie.
Miss
You
Sadie.
didn't dare say Sadie.
No, Miss Sadie, come get me. And she'd say, and John would be sitting on the front porch, and he'd holler, she was way in the back of the house now, and he'd holler, Sadie, come get that child. You hear me? Come get that child. So she'd come get me and lead me across the street, and we'd go across the street. And I wonder how many times we pilfered through that house.
Oh, I don't know.
We'd go through and open drawers and look indoors and all of that, and they never seemed to stop
That
us.
seemed to be a pleasant thing to do at that
Yeah.
age.
Right, and then I remember one time that he was having heart problems, and the doctors had told him to eat raw liver. And he was sitting at the table eating raw liver.
Whoa.
And making us look at him eat that raw liver. And of course, he thought he was teasing us. We were standing there, "Yer!" What?
Well, I know we'd go over there sometimes and she'd be fixing this up and she'd say, what do you want me to fix for you? And she'd fix him something. everything was different. I know she fixed me a chicken leg one time. And, but you had something different, I don't remember what it was, but she fixed everyone something different in the meat line, which, was rare, because we had the same thing at home.
And not much meat, except on Sunday.
Back when we were kids growing up, we didn't have a car, of course, and we didn't have a telephone. But as I say, we had a lot of wealth and a lot of love. But we would have an old a train that came through here, down on the track, seaboard. Came in the afternoon around 5:30 or 6, and you could ride to Atlanta. I think for 10 cents, 15 cents, something like that. And then if we had 50 or 60 cents, we could go see a couple of movies. If we didn't stay and see the newsreel and the comedies and hurried from one theater to the other one, we could make two in an evening, because there was a train that came back at midnight that left the terminal station. And now, we thought nothing of walking from the terminal station up to, even to the Fox, because we couldn't afford the trolley.
We ran.
We ran, energy, you got it, and we have to hurry back. But most of the time, we were either at the Rialto or the Paramount or...
How old were y'all?
Oh, we were 13, 14.
Gosh, then y'all would do that?
Can you imagine such parents being such liberal parents as then?
Nothing bothered us. I mean, we walked those dark streets and nobody ever bothered you or anything.
Of course, we were a group of us usually.
There was always a group, and we was making so much noise, I guess. All those little country kids coming down. But there was a brass rail hamburger place, and of course hamburgers weren't unheard of in Powder Springs. And we didn't have them at home because we didn't have refrigeration. Mm-hmm. We had an ice box, and
never knew what spaghetti
was. And you couldn't buy ground beef because our stores didn't handle meat. They handled saltfish, and they handled salted meat.
Occasionally we had a man that came by and had butchered
Mr. Summers used to kill a beef on the weekend in the wintertime when it got cold. And he'd bring that by in his truck, and you'd go out to the side of the road, he'd stop, blow his horn, everybody knew he was gonna do this, and he'd cut off a hunk of meat.
And Mama would pound on it for an hour to get it tender.
We would sit and chew it like this. But when we had a little extra money, we'd go by that brass rail, and we'd buy a hamburger, and we'd split it. We had to split them because we just did not have enough money. So we'd have a half a hamburger. and we'd get a Coke, and everybody'd get a sip out of it. Ooh, that was good.
We had these friends later on as teenagers. We had this friend that lived up on this hill, and her name was Copple Hudson. And her father maintained the depot there, Southern Railroad, And they had a fairly newer car, but later on they had shows like in Austell. You could go to Austell and see a show instead of going to Atlanta. Even though she went with us in town, anything, shows.
Oh, I know.
But this one particular time, I remember that we'd gone up and decided that we were going to the show in Austell. And we were trying to figure out how to get enough money to get to the show, because we didn't think too much about asking Mama or Daddy all the time for money, And Carl says, well, I know how I'm going to get mine. Another person said, well, I know how I'm going to get mine. Of course, we knew that they were going to invade the chicken yard and take a chicken downtown, sell it, and you get 25 or 30 cents for chicken, And it was, one had money, all shared it. It didn't matter if you didn't have any.
We got enough this time.
Come on, we got enough to go this particular time. So anyway, we'd all figured out that we were going to get to the show, and we got the thing. So then we decided we'd spend the night with Cotton. Of course, they had the car. And they had a garage that set up on stilts. and you went up this hill, you know, and turned this curve, and you made a running start and ran up this ramp into the garage. And we'd get out of it the same way at night, because they'd go to bed, their parents would go to bed, see. And Cottle had, what was their brother, the one
Hugh and Walter.
Walter. But was it Hugh or Walter that would get the car and,
Walter was the oldest one. He married Kathleen.
yeah, I think it was probably Walter. But anyway, they'd get sleep, and then we'd say, well, okay, it's time to go, you know. So, of course, they were in bed by 6 o'clock, 6:30 or something like that, in the winter time, see. And so anyway, we'd slip out. I think they knew we went. I can't help but feel that.
Sure they did.
Yeah,
Sure.
but anyway, we would slip out of the house and get into that car, and he had let it roll backwards, you know, out of the garage, and then it went down this long hill, and he had let it go sailing down that hill, and just as the bottom he had started up, you know, so we couldn't hear it. Then we go to the show. Well, one night we went to the show, and we had made it back and all, having a good time, and he would start up the hill and go flying up the hill and sail into the garage, you know. Well, one night he sailed too fast, and we went out the back.
Through the garage?
Yeah. A little bit too fast. And then as other times we had some friends, Lindley boys, and they with their father ran a soft drink thing, and they had a car.
This was the doctor.
Yeah, doctor, and they had a van that they carted over.
It was
the
called the old R&J truck.
truck. And we all used to get in that orange truck, each truck.
We'd take all the cases out, and Miss Fay had some ottomans.
Nice ones.
Velvet, you know. We'd get the ottomans,
Oh, okay.
and we'd get those, they were Queen Anne style with the wooden legs, you know, and we'd get those and stick them in the back end of that thing and load it down with people.
Yeah.
And take off. And the two brothers fought about who was gonna
Go
drive.
drive.
Pig
Boob
wanted to
won.
drive, Boob wanted to drive.
Hmm.
You can't drive, let me drive. It's my turn now. We'd stop. But we had a bootlegger that sold wine. Ross actually from where Uncle Luther lived, and the boys would always stop in and get a bottle of wine. Generally blackberry, that's all anybody knew off the one, and such thing as blackberry and grape. Because wines were just not known. I mean, wine was a wine, it was grape wine. Or there were no names wines at that time. And I know I might have tasted it, but I never did drink it. The boys drank the most of it, and they never did have enough to do anything with you. They thought they was big since we had it, but we ran that old truck all over the countryside.
We backed it into the lake too one time. with the two boys arguing over who's gonna drive.
That was over at Groover's Lake.
Yeah, and the same bunch of brothers, their grandfather had a wagon and an old horse, and we decided one year we were going on the hay ride, and we got into that thing, and a whole bunch of us kids were in that thing, and Boob was up there driving it, and Pick was saying, slow down, Boob, and about that time, the old horse decided to turn the corner, and we turned in between two of the buildings down there in Powder Springs. And that wagon went like this, and all up against this building we went, pull off a couple of planks. Pink says, I said to you, Boob, that you'd do something like that, you numbskull, you stupid idiot.
I want to ask a question about, and then maybe we'll take a break or something, because I know if y'all don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we've been
Running
talking,
running out.
but do you remember any? I think didn't you say once you went to Dahlonega, or do you remember early trips? I'm trying.
Oh, we went to Tennessee. That was in
Tennessee.
the old T-Mobile. I
Yeah.
never, because I
How
was
many flat
outstanding.
tires did we have?
I have no idea. It was a trip to Atlanta, honey, back then, because the roads
Yeah.
were, I can remember Daddy driving a few times. We'd get up early and go on Saturday mornings when Daddy wouldn't work. Well, we'd drive into Atlanta and not ride the train.
Mhm.
And we would get on coming up Nickajack Hill. I can remember sitting in that back seat, right up toward Mom and Daddy. You're getting as close to them as you can get because you're scared to death. Nobody's on the road but you. And the ruts must have been up to the top of the tire. And that old car is going, I mean, it starts out good. Toot, 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 toot. And he has it in the lowest gear he can get it. And you just think you're pushing, you're pushing like this, trying to get
Trying to
that
help
old
the
T-Mobile.
car up.
And it finally hits the top of the hill and they go toot, 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 toot. But that was a trip. And the one that we went to Tennessee to see cousins.
Oh, that was the time.
And
The
that
girl
old-
squirted the cat on you.
Yeah, she had Mama had made me a pretty little silk dress to wear, and Z had, it was box pleats. She'd embroidered some little designs of peaches and fruit here and up here, and boy, I thought I was pretty. And I was sitting in the swing, and this little girl came over with a baby cat, and she said, "Have you seen my kitty?" And just squeezed them out of it. I just covered my dress up with cat nest.
Oh wow!
It just covered up. Of course, the tears rolled.
You ruined my dress.
I don't guess I was 7 or 8 years old at that time.
But that was the trip, because I know that we had an average of one flat tire for every 20 miles.
Mhm.
Back then, Daddy used those tire tools that,
It was the only thing you had.
teams
Mhm.
of tires, and
And then take it off, and you had this little thing that roughed the rubber up with, and
Yeah.
then you put this glue on it, and then you had a patch that came on over that, and
So you had to fix it right there.
right there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Pump it back up.
Yeah.
and then that on that trip in that little car. Now, how we ever did it, I'll never know. Was Grandpa and Z and Grandma and Mother and you and I.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that car wasn't geared for anybody but 4 people.
But they had pretty good engines in them back then.
And you leave here and go where? I mean, you
We
remember?
Chattanooga, because Grandpa had a brother, wanted a brother.
There was somebody.
How long did it take to get to Chattanooga?
Oh God, it seems like all day.
All day.
doesn't it? It probably was all day.
That we would get there to Chattanooga.
I'll tell you one thing, I'm sure the car ran as fast as it would because Daddy would do that. He was a speed demon when he got behind the wheel. He liked to move, and I can remember going to all-day singings growing up when we were about that same age. And they had an all-day singing somewhere during Sunday that came on.
And Mama wouldn't go.
Well, she did most of the time. There was very few that she didn't go, but we were coming home, and we were coming down this road, and the road went off in front of my house and down around in front of Charles's, and then over the railroad track, and then straight up to the main street. The road didn't go back of the old house now, like it does now, the one road that went
Yeah.
down that way. But there was some pretty good sized ditches through there, and Daddy was going this way, look at that, and hey, look at that, And Richard makes me think I gotta consider, I saw a Bronco over there. But anyway, Mama said, Tatum, if you don't watch where you're going, I'm gonna get out of this car and I'm gonna walk one. And, okay, cool. And about that time, he turned the ditch, he cut it too short, and that old rear end just went ka-boom. And we walked home. and got it out of the ditch and drove it on in.
But we walked on.
Yeah, that, we were at our pasture land, so we just cut right through the pasture and crossed the branch and went on to the house.
Y'all wanna take a break? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's enough of childhood, don't you?